Hey everybody, it's Dwayne, developer evangelist at GitKraken. Today we're taking a look at Git Add. This is the basic mechanism Git uses to stage files in preparation for making commits. We're going to look at an example in the command line and in GitKraken Client. Git Add, as with all other Git commands, has a lot of options and a lot of subcommands you could possibly use. If you want to see them all, you can go check out the full documentation on git-scm.com, and that's true of all Git commands. We're not going to cover every possible way to use it. This would be a very long video if we did that. Instead, we're going to look at some very common ways people use it, as well as conceptually how it works. So let's dig into it. To understand Git Add, we really need to conceptually look at how Git works. Git takes full snapshots of your project at a certain point in time. So when we make a commit, we're really taking a full snapshot of what's going on in that directory. When we change to the next version, we've changed file A and file C. We take brand new snapshots of those files. B, since it didn't change, only needs to point back to the previous version. How we go from a working directory to a commit, well, that's literally what Git Add does. We can conceptually think of Git as having three areas of concern. A working directory where we save our files. That's where we're normally working in our directory. An index, which keeps track of what is ready to be committed. This is where we compress things down and add them into a special file called index. And then when we make a git commit, we actually permanently add them to our project history. At any point in time, we can check out any of our commits, get back to that particular index, and then all the way back to what those blobs look like for those individual files along the way. The git index file is literally just a file inside of the .git folder, which lives inside of all Git projects. The index is a special file that keeps track of all the compressed full snapshots of those individual files in your working directory that have been added to the index. And this, when you make a commit, is actually what gets committed to your project history. Let's go ahead and take a look at how to use Git Add. It'll make a little more sense once you start using it on a regular basis. We'll take a look at adding individual files by file name. Look at adding all files at once. It's not the safest way to work, but if you know what you're doing, it can save a lot of time. And Git Add Interactive, which is a great way to fully explore what's going on with Git Add. So here I am in VS Code, and I'm working in the GitLens repository. And yes, in case you're wondering, I do have GitLens installed. I can see my inline blame here, and if I hover over, I can, yes, get a hover that shows me more information about that commit, where it came from, and all sorts of links. But for right now, what I care about is running the Git status. And I see that, well, I have nothing to commit. I am on a clean working tree. Now I'm going to go ahead and modify this file, and I'm going to modify the README just so we don't have to worry about code for this example. And I'll go ahead and put a hello world as an H1 here. Save that with a Command S, which you can't see on screen. And then if I do a git status, yes, it knows that in fact I have modified the README, but it's not been staged yet. It's not ready to commit. In fact, it tells me use git add to go ahead and add this. So to add this specific file, I'll do a git add and then name the file. In this case, readme.md. And now if I run a git status again, you'll see that I have changes to be committed. That's the README. It is ready to go. I can now commit this to my long-term history. It even gives me a suggestion here. If I want to unstage it, I could do a git restore -- staged and then name the file again to unstage it. Let's next look at an example where I modify multiple files at the same time. So now I've modified 4 different files: the README insiders, a README example, and a README2 example, just again for the example for this video. So if I do a git status, I can see that yes, I do have that README from earlier that is still ready to be committed, changes to be committed. And I do have changes to a file that has not been staged, readme.insiders, and I have 2 untracked files. These are 2 files that just got made, and Git's not sure what to do with them. It sees them in the working directory, but it doesn't know if it should track them or not. Well, to track them, we're going to use the exact same mechanism, git add, but this time I want to add the README insiders to be staged, as well as these 2 untracked files. And to do it all at the same time, I'll do a git add -A, which stands for all. And if I do a git status now, all of these files are now staged and ready to be committed. So all I need to do is do a git commit, add a commit message, and move about my work. Next up, let's look at the interactive mode for Git Add. Right, for this last example, I have modified 2 different files. So if I run a git status, I see that, oh, there they are. They've modified 2 files, but they have not been staged yet. So I could run a git add and name each individual file, or I could do a -a to add both of them. But in this case, I'm going to do a -i and run interactive mode. This is a very safe way to make sure you know what's going on with your git adds. Since, well, this is the first time I've run it, I'm going to go ahead and enter 8, and that's going to give me all of the options that I have here. So status would show me, well, that's the status right there. Update, which would add working tree state to the stage set of changes. That's what I want to do. So we'll go ahead and do 2 to update, and it'll ask me, well, which ones do I want to update? 1 and 2. Now, it's not that intuitive, but if when I'm done adding what I need to add there, I'll just hit enter one more time, and it'll pull me back out to that command palette. And now I can actually see the status if I run a 1, and it shows that, hey, these are staged, and nothing has been unstaged, and there's the path for what has been staged. So I think that's all I needed to do here, so I could go ahead and quit. So that's number 7. And if I run a git status now, I see that, yes, in fact, those 2 files have been added. Interactive mode is a very safe way to interact with most Git commands, but Git Add is a great example of where you can really take advantage of it. Let's take a look at an example of using Git Add over on GitKraken Client. And here we are over in GitKraken Client. Here I can see my work in progress, that I have unstaged files, in this case, README, Insiders, and README again, where I've added that same hello world at the top, just to make it easy for this example. And I can see clearly they're unstaged. To stage one at a time, I could go and click on the stage file beside each file. And I can even unstage from here by clicking Unstage Files. Or I could click Stage All Files to stage all the files. And now I'm ready to go, and I'll add my message here. Hello world, added top, and click there, and I'd be able to commit those changes. But, well, I don't actually want to commit those changes. I'll use the undo button to get me right back to staged. As you can see, using GitKraken Client to do things like this makes it a little bit easier to understand what's going on. Thanks for tuning in for this video. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about how Git Add works and a little bit more about how you can leverage GitKraken Client to make your life a little bit easier.